Want to turn to the White House now, where after days of calling the federal response to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico an incredible success and even underappreciated, President Trump is now denying the official death toll. In fact, he's gone beyond denying it. He's claimed that this is all a ploy by Democrats. CNN's Abby Phillip joins me now with the latest. Abby, good morning.
Well, good morning, Erica. This is, for President Trump, an escalation in the rhetoric around this issue that we know for several days now. He's been saying that he believes that Hurricane Maria was an unsung success for the federal government, that they did everything that they could. And now he's saying that these claims that there might have been more people dying as a result of this storm are all part of what he called done by Democrats in order to make me look bad. Look as bad as possible when I was successfully raising billions of dollars to help Puerto Rico. The president also claims that when people died of old age, that was counted in the death toll, but that is not true. This death toll is a result of a study that was commissioned by the government of Puerto Rico to find out whether there were people who died unnecessarily as a result of the storm, whether it was because they couldn't be found in time or there was no power in places where they needed them, hospitals, that sort of thing. And the president is not addressing any of that, really. He's just simply focusing on what he says is a conspiracy against him when it comes to this death toll. This is coming really at a bad time for the White House. They're trying to refocus attention to Hurricane Florence. They're trying to reassure people in the path of this current storm that the federal government is working as hard as possible on this issue. But President Trump is trying to relitigate Hurricane Maria, trying to get accolades for it. But clearly there's a lot of disagreement on this issue. And frankly, Erica, I think a lot of people on the ground in Puerto Rico, whether or not they agree 100% with these death toll estimates or not, believe that perhaps more should have been done. But you don't hear that at all from President Trump.
And last I saw, Abby, there were no public events that we knew of for the president today. Do we know if what he has on his schedule in terms of perhaps meeting with FEMA? We're waiting on a briefing from FEMA coming up, or just how in touch he is with the developments about Hurricane Florence with his officials today? Or are they tight-lipped on that?
They are being very tight-lipped on that. President Trump has nothing on his schedule publicly at all today. Yesterday was a day that we were expecting to hear a lot more from the White House. We only got an update on what President Trump's briefings were very late in the day. He spoke to the governor of Georgia. He had gotten briefings on the Florence response, and he spoke about it briefly at the top of an event here at the White House. But it will be interesting to see whether or not they show more of President Trump's engagement on this issue, whether or not he does anything to kind of let folks know exactly how responsive he is being. So it's still pretty early here. We'll see whether we get more from them, but so far, nothing. Erica.
Interesting, too, as you pointed out, Abby, that officials there and folks in the White House, in the West Wing, trying to do their best to redirect the president. And he keeps going back to making this about his performance. Are any of those folks talking this morning?
Well, so, these tweets just happened moments ago, and often when the president tweets at this hour, this is the time when he's still in the residence. He hasn't even gotten to the West Wing yet. Aides haven't even had a chance to really engage with him. So many of these tweets will come as a surprise to people working for the president. But I have to tell you, over the last several days, there is not a desire in this White House to talk about Hurricane Maria, to relitigate this issue of how many people died exactly. The issue of whether there were casualties in that storm is beyond question. Everybody knows that there were. The job for the president, I think his aides believe, is just to express sympathy in these cases and express a willingness to make sure that the federal government is engaged in future hurricanes. But President Trump is doing something completely different. He's taking this on head on. Yesterday, he was tweeting new attacks at the mayor of San Juan, who he's been engaged with for months since the hurricane. And again, it's a distraction. What we're hearing from White House aides is that they want to talk about how well the Florence response is going, which, by all accounts, The folks on the ground are saying they're working pretty well with the federal government. That's what the White House wants to talk about today. They're not having that opportunity right at this moment because the president is dictating the agenda via Twitter.
Via Twitter, which is, as we know, a daily occurrence. And it is fascinating, as you point out, Abby, because there is a lot in place, and we have seen mobilization. Obviously, we're hearing a bit from the federal government, but from states as well pitching in. We will continue to keep an eye on that. Abby, appreciate it as always. I want to bring in now CNN's Leila Santiago, who joins us from San Juan. Leila, of course, was on the ground from the very beginning. Your reporting has been an absolute standout from the beginning, Leila, and I would imagine that for folks who are waking up and seeing these tweets from the President of the United States, there's perhaps a bit of a reaction this morning.
Right. Listen, this just happened, and I can tell you that this will likely have a big response, just like it did when the Harvard study came in that actually put this number at much higher, around 4,600, the death toll. So let me just sort of paint the picture of what I've seen in just the last few days that will likely give a better idea of what Puerto Ricans will have to say and how they will feel about this. As we have traveled around Puerto Rico a year later in the last few days, people are still traumatized by this hurricane. And one of the things that I have heard over and over is, I lost someone. I lost more than a home. I lost more than family and friends who left this island. I lost a loved one, someone who died as a result of this storm. And one of the things that President Trump may not really be looking at here is that, yes, when he came, the death toll was at 16 certified deaths. Hours after he left, it jumped up to the 30s. But those are all what we call direct deaths. Those are the deaths that come because a direct result of the hurricane. This number that spikes up to 3,000 includes the indirect deaths. Those deaths that have been a result of the conditions of living here, of being 11 months without power. That's how long it took to restore for some people. The case I always talk about that we have featured is the case of a man named Natalio. He died January 6th in the southeastern part of the island because he had no power. And when the generator ran out of diesel in the middle of the night, the breathing machine that he uses to breathe at night stopped working. And as a result, he died. That is an indirect death. That is a death that is included in this number 3,000, which came from researchers at George Washington University after the government of Puerto Rico commissioned a study to look into the deaths. So when President Trump talks about that small number, that 16 that he quoted as a way to show what a great job the recovery was when he came after the hurricane, he's really only talking about direct deaths. He's not taking into account the people who got into an accident because they didn't see that the bridge was out. The people who didn't have access to hospitals because the roads were closed. The people who didn't have power and needed that breathing machine. The people who couldn't get dialysis because the dialysis center didn't have power to operate and care for these medical patients. That's what the number 3,000 takes into account. That's what the people of Puerto Rico are thinking about. They are thinking that that number reflects the devastation that came after Hurricane Maria, after President Trump left.
And that, Leila, is what we call a complete picture, of course, and full reporting as to what happened, not cherry-picking numbers that may or may not convene for people and the message they want to send out there. Leila Santiago, thank you as always. I know you'll continue to stay on the response from Puerto Rico as well. We can tell you we are just hearing from the mayor of San Juan, and this is the tweet from the mayor. This is what denial following neglect looks like. Mr. President, she writes, in the real world, people died on your watch. Your lack of respect is appalling.